Okay, we are live, but we gotta let it breathe just for a moment while we bring on Facebook, bring on Instagram, get some of that O2 rolling through us, and then there we go, Instagram, and we are good. Welcome in everybody. Thursday night, it's the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me is my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zack, this time next week, in fact, in 3 or so days, you and I are going to be chopping it up, having a blast in Indianapolis, but it's kind of still hurry up and wait. Like I'm excited to go, but now the time's like just moving real slow. How are you, bud?
I'm good. I'm happy that it's coming up, Chad. It's where the rumors will start, kicking into place, so we'll hear a lot more about the Broncos' offseason strategy. So I'm excited to hang out with you and get some good nuggets for the MHH folks.
Pardon me. So I spent about 3 hours away from the office today, and so I missed some of the stuff. But I do know, Zack, that the Denver Broncos. I haven't read the article yet, but the Broncos have reportedly hired a new assistant, and you had the article for us breaking it down. Who is this guy, and what's the deal, yo?
I hope I don't mispronounce his name too badly. Marwan Malouf is the Broncos' new assistant special teams coordinator. He's replacing Chris Banjo, who left for the Jets special teams coordinator job last month. Malouf, worked together with Darren Rizzi, the Broncos' new coordinator in Miami. He also was the coordinator for the Vikings, the Colts. He was an assistant in Baltimore, and he had a lot of college stops as well before that, Chad. So a fairly accomplished, experienced coach to have on the sidelines in an assistant capacity behind Darren Rizzi.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, they had to get cracking, and this is really in a short matter of time. They've filled two of the, pardon me, still persisting coaching vacancies. I mean, this coaching staff got straight pilfered this off season, and it's kind of a little bit of a surprise because it was almost with the focus on the Broncos coaching staff was almost with the fervor of a team that won the Super Bowl. It's like they not barely, but they were the 7 seed. Okay, 10 wins, bounced in the first round, and now every Broncos coach, is getting a look. But so it created vacancies, right? So we got this guy replacing Banjo. We've got Rizzi replacing Kotwicka. And then, we've got a pass game coordinator in John Morton, who took the job to go be the OC in Detroit to replace. Who knows, maybe they don't need to replace it. Pardon me. I got this frog in my throat. Maybe there's a plan internally, Zack, to maybe have Pete Carmichael, who was Sean Payton's 15-year offensive coordinator in New Orleans, just move into that role. He's on staff as a senior advisor or whatever. Tight ends, Declan Doyle, Zack, is still open up to this point. And then let's see, linebackers, right? Am I missing anything when they fired Greg Minuski, the inside linebackers guy? I think that's all of them, but still, that's a lot of holes left open.
Yeah, a couple in the front office too. Assistant GM after Darren Muji left to New York, and also David Shaw. He was like a senior personnel advisor or whatever for the Broncos. I don't know if they're going to replace that role, but they're kind of chipping away, Chad. As you mentioned, they filled two. They have a few more to go, and it'll get done. As Sean Payton says, he's slow to hire and quick to fire.
The Papa Bear, David McElrath, in the house with an early super chat, as is his way.
Thank you, David.
Stoked to see you tonight, David. Hope you're doing well, big dog. He says, good evening, Broncos country. Hashtag God bless the USA. Yeah, a lot going on lately, man. I think we need that. Hashtag let's go, Bo. MHH for life. Buckham ×3. Denver Broncos for life. SEAL Team Knicks. I love it. Thank you, Papa Bear. Hope you're doing well, big dog. And we also have Sam Bam. Now, by the way, we've got the Papa Bear locked in for a superstar segment following the draft. So that's a ways out. And then we have Sam Bam coming up here pretty soon. I got to remind myself when we booked that, but I'll remember here in a minute. But Sam, we're stoked to get you back on the show. Can't wait, buddy. He says, evening, guys, 9 weeks until the draft and looking forward to being, he had it. See, if I just read it for a second on the show, March 13th, hard pass on Raheem Mostert unless he wants to play for minimum wage. Go Broncos. Yes, Zach. So that's another one of the angles I wanted to explore this evening is, and this was James Campbell had a write-up for us at milehighhuddle.com. pursuing former Dolphins Pro Bowl running back Raheem Mostert. How do you say it? Is it Mostert or Mostert? Mostert. That's what I thought. And he has a nice breakdown on it. But Zach, I'll just kind of spoil the takeaway here at the bottom. He's saying that, yeah, it's not that you don't necessarily go after a Mostert, but you're not breaking the bank like a max contract, Zach, of like 1.5, 2 million APY, which is essentially in principle what Sam's saying here too.
Yeah, I wouldn't even do it for the minimum wage. I followed Mostert really closely last season. He was on my fantasy bench, and he is always hurt, Chad. He's never really available. So even if you sign him for the vet minimum, just his presence alone might take away carries from another running back, a younger running back, a drafted running back, what have you. There is no veteran running back on the open market that I would want the Broncos to sign, even for the vet minimum.
What about Aaron Jones, though?
Slightly better version of Jeanty. I want that quick guy in the backfield. Give me Travion or give me Jeanty or give me Death.
Ronk, brother, great to see you tonight, big dog. Hope you are doing well. Appreciate the stars and the support as always, my friend. He says, good evening. And by the way, Ronk, offered it before. Again, we understand it's not for everybody, but if you would like to join us on a superstar segment, we'd happily have you on. So, kick it around, think about it, reach out if it's something you want to do. But thank you. Says, good evening, Chad and Zach on the Mile High Huddle podcast. Jeez. Go Bo Broncos. Thank you, brother. Really good to see you. Raheem Mostert, Zach, this was an undrafted guy that really kind of came into his own with Kyle Shanahan in that scheme, followed one of his former coaches to Miami, spent the last few years there. But he did post, just for what it's worth, he's getting long in the tooth. He's entering, this season will be his age 33 season. I'm just throwing this out there, food for thought. Last year was pretty forgettable. He appeared in 13 games with one start, only had 278 rushing yards, and averaged a lowly, Zach, 3.3 yards per carry. But the season before, he made the Pro Bowl as a 1,000-yard rusher with 18 touchdowns. Now, that's when they had that scheme down there. Eric Flynn, what's up, brother? Thank you for the stars. So good to see you. That's when McDaniel had that scheme running down there and finely tuned, blowing out the Broncos to historic levels. But in the hands of the right staff and scheme, I could still see Mostert having a little bit of an impact. But like you said, dude, honestly, I wouldn't mind bringing him in for low cost contract, but definitely don't go trying to break the bank for a guy that is as old as he is.
Exactly. I didn't even realize he was going to be 33. So he's old, he's ineffective, and he's injury prone. There's no reason why the Broncos should sign a one-year wonder who was good in Miami scheme, as you mentioned, Chad, but the Broncos don't have the same systems. It's just hard pass, draft a running back.
Well, he's old, even though he hasn't been in the NFL zeitgeist. Like, you think of if you would have asked me before this hit the news wire, I would have guessed that he was like a 6th, 7th year guy, something like that. Because my memory and perception of Mostert starts San Francisco. And by the way, his first year in San Fran, that was 2016. So that, I guess that's still a little bit longer, farther back than I would have assumed. But Zach, he was undrafted in 2015. He's old, dude. Miami Dolphins. And these were all teams he spent time with, but didn't see any action. And it wasn't until he got to San Francisco with the zone scheme and just the way the stars aligned there that he became kind of a thing. And his best career season, of course, was 2023 for what it's worth.
Yeah, people are entitled if they want to go after Raheem Mostert. I understand the Broncos need the depth. But again, I mean, is he going to be on the field for you? Can you count on him? Is he going to be that game-breaking back that you need to complement the Estimes and the Blake Watsons, the guy you already have under contract? Just no, he's not going to be that guy.
Guys, we want to hear from you in the chat. What are your thoughts on Mostert? Do you want the Broncos to kick tires? Let us know in the chat. Meanwhile, hey, listen, football's in the books for now. It'll be back before we know it, but basketball's rolling on. So when you're watching your favorite star score a bucket, you've got an opportunity for an alley-oop from MHH to win some money from watching sports with Underdog. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps, and you can play right now in your state. Listen, do you want to win up to 1,000 times your money? Well, you can with Underdog.
Yeah, listen up, Broncos country. To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, be it points, assists, rebounds, and much more. Underdog's got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all basketball picks or mix and match across other sports. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into $1,000 just with your basketball knowledge.
Dude, I've had so much fun playing Underdog since it crossed our orbit. And, I've made a buck or two here and there as well, and you can too. So download the Underdog app, sign up now using the promo code MHuddle to unlock a special offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun with us. When you sign up, use our promo code MHuddle and claim your special offer today, getting that up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
Zach, are you too young to remember the Micro Machines television commercials? Do you remember what the Micro Machines were? They were basically like Hot Wheels, but they were micro. And so they called them Micro Machines.
No.
You know Hot Wheels, the Micro Machines. And the thing about the commercial is, those guys that do the what do you call it? The auctions. Okay, sorry, brain fart there. They do auctions there, and hey, right like that. So the Micro Machines guy, he would come on and they'd do this little thing. It was, it's a 15-second commercial or whatever, and he'd talk that fast. And the little fine print part at the end of our Underdog script, I don't know if you've ever heard Nick Kendall do it, but he sounds just like the Micro Machines guy. And it's over. So he's got skills in that department. He missed his calling, but let's see here. Let's see what Eric Smith on Facebook. Let's get a temperature on this. He's saying pass on Mostert. The Broncos need fresh legs in the backfield. I feel you. Osborne's saying I would keep Estime before we try to acquire Mostert. Well, Estime's under contract. He's a 5th-round pick last year. He's got 3 years left on his deal. Here's a reminder of the lay of the land. The Broncos are losing Javonte Williams. He's an unrestricted free agent unless they opt to bring him back, which, Zach, people keep, including us, like we talk about it as if it's fait accompli, like he's not coming back. But Sean Payton had some kind of a soft spot for Pookie. So it wouldn't completely shock me if they brought him back on a relatively cheap deal. But then you've got Jaleel McLaughlin. He'll be back. And Tyler Bidet. And then Blake Watson. So a pretty uninspiring, with the exception of McLaughlin and still untapped potential in Estime. Bidet, I don't really have too high hopes for. When we were in the must this past season, we just needed anybody who might bring a spark. It was one thing, but in terms of hanging your hat on it, planning around it, projecting, I don't expect Bidet to come in and be the savior. It's got to be the draft, and I think a guy like Aaron Jones could thrive with the Sean Payton offense and whatnot, but I still think the best path is use these free agent dollars on defense, fill those defensive holes. Maybe, I'm not saying don't spend it all on offense and free agency, Zach, but look to the draft, because all those need positions on offense the Broncos have, this is the draft to be in that position.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I'd be a little disheartened if the Broncos brought back Javonte. They try to make it work the last couple seasons. It's clear he's not the same running back he was pre-injury. He looks a little washed, Chad, so time to move on and find some youth and fresh legs, like the comment said, in the backfield, and speed preferably. So I agree with the premise, though. We know what Mostert is. I think he peaked in the NFL. We don't really know yet what Estime is. He still has a little unknown ceiling, and I agree. I'd like to tap into that a little more in 2025.
For what it's worth, Todd's saying signing Javonte would be better than Mostert. I don't know. The Duchess is in the house, people. Michaela Parker has joined us this evening. Hiya, right back, Michaela. Appreciate the super. Seriously, this time of year especially, it really helps us. So thank you. She says, use a draft pick for a running back. I'm not crazy about any of the free agent running backs. Hope you all are well. Hashtag love. Right back at you. And yeah, there are some interesting guys. Zach, I don't know how much the injury jacket with Travion Henderson bothers you, but what's your read on that? Because Eric was saying, was it Eric or Nick? I've lost track. I've edited so many of their mock drafts now that I'm starting to confuse some of it, but not because it's not good, but because like when you're editing thousands of words, sometimes you're going to forget which guy said what, right? So one of the two guys, forgive me, fellas, said that I think it was Eric now that I think about it, but were it not for his injury jacket, Henderson would be up there as a first round guy right next to Jeanty in terms of the pecking order. Your thoughts?
I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be pushing for first round draft status. I think he'll test really well at the combine and he'll interview well during the pre-draft process. And if he's not a first round pick, he's going to be a very high second round pick. I really like him a lot, Chad. Explosive runner, explosive pass catcher, can do it all. He's exactly what I think and some other Broncos fan think they need in their backfield. And, when it comes to conversations like, Javonte or Aaron Jones or Raheem Mostert, it's like back in the day with quarterbacks choosing the best of a bad situation. Oh, Case Keenum or Paxton Lynch or Brock Osweiler. How about the Broncos just aim higher and devote for once a premium resource into the position? So make it a point in the first or the second round to draft one of those top running backs. I agree with Michaela. That's the way to go.
And while we still have Michaela on screen here with us with her super chat, we're also being asked about from Todd. This is on the subject of the draft. Omarion Hampton, would he be a good fit for the offense? And this is a guy, for what it's worth, coming up from North Carolina, which, he followed by a couple years. He followed Pookie there as a Tar Heel. His 2023 season, Zach, 1,500 rush yards, 15 touchdowns. This past season, he had about 30 more carries as a senior, 1,660 yards, 15 touchdowns. So he's a very productive back, and I'm trying to pull up his mock draftable. Best rank in terms of the big boards, 42. It's looking like, wow, he's pretty highly considered in the mock drafts for what it's worth. But how much he's projected basically, though, guys, as a second round pick. What are your thoughts on Hampton?
It's a bit of a precipitous fall off after Jeanty and Henderson to me. I guess I wouldn't mind if they settled for Hampton, but to me, Chad, he's not as explosive as the other two. And that's my name of the game for the Broncos at running back: explosion, speed, game-breaking ability. I feel like he doesn't have that as much as Henderson and Jeanty do.
Man, it would be cool, though, Jeanty. The more time that passes, the more I'm starting to actually be a little bit more optimistic that he'll be available at 20 because I don't know. It's just there's a lot of premium position or a lot of premium prospects at the top of this draft, and I could see it pushing him down a little bit because he is a running back.
And also, I mean, one of the teams that I've been thinking that would vie for Jeanty at the Cowboys, well, Zach Martin, their future Hall of Fame guard, announced his retirement today. I wonder now if that changes their draft plans, if they go offensive lineman, and maybe Jeanty could slide down the draft board. You never know.
That's a good point. I mean, that does shake up the equation a little bit if you're Dallas drafting. But it's also that the new head coach, Brian Schottenheimer, and even though, any head coach in Dallas is going to play second fiddle to Jerry Jones and all that when it comes to the draft, you got to imagine that they're going to have some influence on how it goes. And it's hard to predict, being that this is his first time around in that job. And surprisingly so, like he's been a high level coordinator for a long time. I don't know why he never really got a strong shake until now, but I'm happy to see Marty's boy actually get that opportunity. So for what it's worth, but Taylor jumping in, Christensen with a super chat. Thank you, pal. Great to see you tonight. One of our bona fide super chat superstars saying, pass on the free agent backs. Also, I know I asked you about Justin Fields already, but are you guys glad we passed on quarterbacks and Micah Parsons in 2021? And why Jeanty, guys? I don't see it. So first of all, Fields, it was a bullet dodged. It really was, like in that particular draft. And there have been times, Zach, where I've been a little bit envious of Parsons in Dallas just because of, he's
Same.
been real productive. Let's face it, as a edge and pass rusher guy. But in the final analysis, I think it worked out the way it was supposed to work out.
I mentioned on Monday's pod that I've gotten a bunch of things wrong over the years, and I've, held my hand up for it. I've owned it. Well, the one thing I did get right is passing on Fields and taking PS2. A lot of Broncos fans wanted a quarterback at 9. George Payton stuck to his guns and took the cornerback, and it's turned out to be great. Parsons, though, was the one guy that I wanted above both of them, obviously over Fields and over PS2. I loved him coming out of college. I wasn't worried about the perceived baggage that he had, Chad, and he's turned into maybe a future Hall of Fame pass rusher. But it comes down to what you think is more important for a defense, the shutdown corner or the dominant pass rusher. Either way, it's good.
I see that one of the concerns from Taylor also is the Jeanty fumbles. I'm trying to find the metric here on his fumbles on Sports Reference, but I'm not seeing it right off the top of my head. So as we keep talking tonight, I'll go back and see if I can't find it here while we're talking, instead of when it's my turn to talk. But we'll circle back on that, my friend. Pardon me. The Ronk checking in again. He says, bringing this up again, Broncos, not to say that you shouldn't. I mean, we ran today, MHH ran a meme around this because it is just so infuriating if you're a Broncos fan. He says, Broncos QB Bo Nix was ranked number 20 on NFL.com. Nick shook his quarterback rankings of the 2024 season. Go check out his quarterback rankings list. We touched on this a few nights ago. It might have been, yeah, thanks, Scott. It might have been, you might not have been there, Mike. I'm not sure, but we could go through it again if you want the Cliff Notes version of the names ranked ahead of Bo Nix by Nick Shook. Is quite astounding.
I'm trying to get a refresher, Chad, because I don't remember who is ahead of him. I'm going
I'll
through
pull it up. I'll pull it up. You ready?
I have it, yeah.
I'm just going to go in descending order.
Okay.
All right. Number 1, Lamar. Number 2, Josh Allen. Number 3, Joe Burrow. Number 4, Jared Goff. Number 5, Jaden Daniels. Remember that. Number 6, Baker Mayfield. Number 6, Baker Mayfield. Number 7, Patrick Mahomes. Number 8, Matthew Stafford. Number 9, Jalen Hurts. Number 10, Jordan Love. Number 11, Justin Herbert. 12, Geno Smith. 13, Sam Darnold. 14, Brock Purdy. 15, CJ Stroud. 16, this is the one that just really gets my goat, Bryce Young, the guy who was benched. 17, Kyler Murray. 18, Tua. 19, Dak Prescott. And then you get to 20 and Mr. Bo Nix, etc. And by the way, this does include the arithmetic here includes playoffs.
Now I remember the Bryce Young being at 16 or whatever it was jostled my memory. Yeah, it's, we talked about it, Michael, a few days ago. We obviously disagree. He's not the 20th best quarterback in the NFL. That list is ridiculous, but that's still one person's opinion, and we'll be here to dissect it.
Yeah, it's just fuel for the fire, and I think it's one of those things that Sean Payton, as we know, he's a lot more sensitive relative to the media and social media. He spends a lot more time reading the press clippings, as it were, than a Vic Fangio ever would have. Like, Vic Fangio probably doesn't even know how to log into X or maybe a Facebook because of his generation, but I doubt it. Sean Payton is the type of guy that's actually checking that stuff quite a lot. And so my point here is I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the things he holds on to as a little bit of locker room bulletin board fodder to help fire up the dudes and fire up Bo Nix, especially in 2025 when they all reconvene, OTAs, get to training camp, etc.
Yeah, I'll resurface what I said a few days ago on this topic. Sean Payton said that he has 2 middle fingers. He doesn't use them in public, but best believe behind closed doors in that locker room, he's MFing a lot of people. He's flipping off a lot of people, and he's firing up his team because of those people.
Yes, as Todd says, what are these guys smoking? Calling Nix the 20th best? Redonkulous. Yeah, exactly. It's And here's what he says. Take a victory lap, Bo. This is Nick Shook. Denver's decision to spend its first-round pick on the Oregon product was met with plenty of immediate criticism, but Sean Payton trusted his gut and showed he and the Broncos front office were correct in thinking Nix was the ideal fit for his offense. Payton consistently had his rookie passer on the move, and Nix thrived accordingly, so much so that he generated legit Offensive Rookie of the Year buzz at midseason. And I'll remind you, Shook, he was a finalist. Those takes tailed off once Nix encountered some difficulties, but his debut season was a resounding success nonetheless. Close quote. So that's the analysis on Bo Nix being the 20th ranked quarterback of 2024, according to Nick Shook. And I don't think it's like, Bo Nix, it's not egregious that a rookie quarterback, I mean, think about it. For the Broncos, even, like, if you would have said to us this time last year that the Broncos are going to draft a rookie, we don't know who it's going to be yet, but they're going to draft a guy and he'll finish in the top 20 QB rankings, we would have been stoked on that. With the amount of time we spent wandering the desert, we'd been like, nice. But Bo Nix's season, yeah, it started off, Zach, a little bit bumpy, 0-2, had a little bit of success in Tampa, but didn't even throw a touchdown pass for whatever it was, 60 yards against the Jets. So that first quarter of the season, it was slow coming out of the gate, so to speak, but it was the second quarter of the season, October, where he turned it on. You're like, whoa. And I still wonder, man, hey, what would his final stat lines have looked like if he doesn't suffer that back injury versus the Raiders, in Vegas? He beat him in Vegas, but still, we were questioning, well, why all of a sudden New Orleans game, he starts running a lot more planned quarterback runs, Zach, all this. And he goes on a roll where he's stacking up the yardage, leading the team in rushing for whatever it was, 3 or 4 weeks. And then all of a sudden it disappeared. And then we found out after the season, oh, well, that Raider game, he suffered a back injury that required a little bit of cleaning up. Well, we don't know for sure that's what his procedure was, right? Like, it's a mystery exactly, but I don't think you got to be a rocket scientist, even though there have been reports that it wasn't his back that was getting cleaned up.
You want to hear something disgusting? I had to go look at the Bryce Young blurb on NFL.com, and this is the last sentence of that blurb. Quote, "He's truly become a treat to watch, and I can't wait to see where his career goes from here." Now, keep in mind, a little context, this was the number 1 overall pick who was benched midseason for Andy Dalton in Carolina. And what did Young go on to do? 4-8 in 2024, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks, 2,400 yards. So I said this the other day. If you're going to put Bo Nix that low, then show your work. Explain why he's below Bryce Young, or at least try to hide your bias, which is very evident a little more.
Definitely. Well said. But hey, we get a little triggered when you bring up the Bo Nix being ranked at 20. And even though we talked about it a few nights ago, Mike, I'm glad you brought it up again, because it's worth as many Broncos fans knowing about it as possible, just because it's ridiculous. All right, let me just see what Mr. Producer's saying there. Yeah. Okay. We go back to, Zach, the news cycle here. A few things at MHH as far as content and news that I wanted to get your take on. One of them, you had the article for us. Broncos predicted to sign veteran tight end ... Zach Ertz. Now, the outfit linking or connecting the dots, let's say Pro Football Network, but since, Zach, you had the article, break down what was said and whether you think Ertz makes sense for the Broncos.
Yeah, basically, it was like an article where the outlet predicted one player that every team is going to sign in free agency, and the outlet landed on Zach Ertz for the Broncos. Predicted a short-term deal, a player who would raise the floor of the tight end room and provide some sort of safety outlet for Bo Nix. I can't say I disagree, Chad. He would be better than an Adam Troutman, better than a Nate Atkins, better than a Thomas Yasmin, and he was a stabilizing force in Washington for another young quarterback, Jaden Daniels. He appeared in all 17 games last season, Ertz did, and he was pretty respectable down the field as a receiver at tight end. I would still want the Broncos to prioritize that position in the draft, but I wouldn't mind if they took a flyer on Zach Ertz for a year.
I wouldn't either, as a 1-year kind of Band-Aid, but he's 34. He's up there. But he had some success. I mean, he was one of the, just this past season with Jaden Daniels, he was kind of the security blanket in many ways for the rookie. And I can appreciate what he did. And so I think and there was enough still left in the tank, his availability, I think you'd be pretty safe bringing him in if it's like a 1-year deal, and just not overpaying for that, but being real careful not to throw too much money at him.
Another thing I like, though, is that he'd be a great mentor for whoever the Broncos would draft. A tight end could learn a lot from Zach Ertz, who won a Super Bowl with Philadelphia, Chad. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler. He's posted a bunch of yards and catches and touchdowns over the course of his career. Really good tight end of this generation who, again, I wouldn't mind just to raise the floor of that room, not the ceiling, the floor.
Now, I'm going to shift gears here. And by the way, we're at 30 minutes. We're doing pretty good time-wise, guys. But if you do have any burning questions, topics, supers, get them in the chat. But Zach, 'tis the season. Again, we're here in the leading up to the combine. Then we're going to get to the new league year, and then we'll get to the pro days and the draft. But this time of year, basically from now until now until the beginning of the free agent cycle and then the draft, 'tis the season for the lists, the rankings, the best player or each free agent being linked here, cap casualties, etc. So it's off-season fodder. And I only say this because we got to keep it in context and not overreact too much in maybe the way we're a little overly triggered by NFL.com ranking Bo Nix number 20. But similarly, NFL.com, I'm going, what are they smoking? Like, are they even paying attention to what happened in Denver last year? You have the story again, Zach. NFL.com's Matt Okada recently billed Broncos defensive lineman John Franklin Myers as, quote, the first candidate for release, and it's a potential move that would clear $7 million in 2025 salary cap space. Break it down.
Broncos country, relax. I'm not the one that suggested this. I'm not the one who came up with this idea. I don't agree with it. This is from NFL.com, and I happen to do my job and repurpose it and report it to the masses. But I don't agree, Chad. That writer did list JFM as the first candidate for release if the Broncos wanted to go that route. And there's like 10 other players that come to mind I would cut before I'd cut JFM. Had a great season his first year in Denver. He's an integral part of that line, and they should be adding to that defensive front, not subtracting from it. I cannot disagree with this take more, which is not mine again.
Well, especially, he had 7 sacks from the interior. As an interior rusher, he had 7 sacks. So it's like, what are you smoking, dude? For his cost from the inside, it's worth the price of admission, dude. They'll pay that all day long. Eric Flynn, especially after what happened in the Super Bowl. Eric Flynn jumping in again. I cannot stand most of the mainstream media people. They made their decision about Bo before he ever got drafted. He could win the Super Bowl, and they'd still say it wasn't because of him. Yeah, there'd be a lot of people, Zach. Let's pretend in an alternate universe the Broncos beat the Bills. They shock the world. They go on. They make the Super Bowl. They win the Super Bowl. You'd be seeing Sean Payton, and justifiably so, just getting glazed. And there would be a fair swath of national press and media also glazing Bo Nix, but you'd have a lot of people going, Sean Payton, Bo Nix. Sean Payton won it all again with that, his veteran coaching and offensive wizardry, whatever, in spite of a rookie quarterback, etc. That's just the way it goes, man. Like Bo Nix, I don't know why there was so much antipathy over Bo Nix, but I would have thought that over the course of the season that he produced, Zach, that some of those takes would have diminished up to this point.
No, and look at the quarterback tier rankings where Bo is listed among the bottom. Look at the 33rd team, whatever they are, Chad, that wouldn't include Bo with the same stat as Jaden Daniels. And there was a Broncos bias in the national media for years. It's been that way. Now there's a Bo Nix bias in the media. And if Bo Nix walked on water, they would say it's because he couldn't swim. That's just how it is, and that's just how it will be, even if he does win the Super Bowl. But guess what, Eric? If he does, who really gives a what anybody says? If he's hoisting that Lombardi, I don't care how they did it. I don't care what his numbers look like. All I care about is that sweet, sweet victory.
Indeed.
I was about to curse. Let him hate.
Oh, sorry. I'm just Googling something real quick. So the perception, I wonder how much, like with Taylor on Jeanty, has to do with the Fiesta Bowl, where the Penn State Nittany Lions basically blew out Boise State 31-14. Sorry for the quick shifting of gears, but Mr. Producer got back to me with some data here. And Jeanty fumbled twice on the big stage caliber game. Before that, he fumbled twice that season, right? So he fumbled twice during the season, then he fumbled twice during the bowl game. So, that to me is not enough. That's not a high enough volume to remove or diminish, Zach, the fact that he rushed for 2,600 yards, was the runner-up Heisman Trophy, and really what I think he could do at the next level. Is it something you want to be aware of? Absolutely. It's something that you're going to emphasize coaching, maybe learn some of the lessons that you had to with Audric Estime last year if you end up landing Jeanty. But I don't know. I got to tell you, I don't think it's as ball security with him is not as big of a deal. I mean, you got to remember, dude, this guy, let me go back to him. This guy carried the ball last year 374 times. 4 times he put it on the ground. So you never want to see it, but he had a high volume of touches, Zach.
I'm going to invoke Mike Tomlin. I do not care. I had to suffer through Melvin Gordon for years, and Jeanty is far and away more talented than a Melvin Gordon. You can teach ball security, Chad. You know what you can't teach? Speed, explosion, game-breaking ability, dynamism, which Jeanty has in spades. I'm willing to overlook a bad bowl game performance. I'm willing to overlook a character flaw for the same reasons I was willing to overlook it for Micah Parsons, because the guy can play, and I want guys who can play on my team.
No doubt about it. I mean, yeah, the amount of hay a guy like Sean Payton could make with Ashton Jeanty is like mind-blowing. Scott says 6 fumbles total the previous 2 years. So I'll agree that it's, like, for example, we look at Raheem Mostert. We were talking about him early in the show. He's a pro, granted. So it's a little bit different level of emphasis in terms of the stakes, but he had, let's see, last year fumbles, he had 2 on 85 touches. Previous season as a Pro Bowler, Zach, 1,000 yards on 209 carries. Mostert had 4 fumbles. And then, he didn't really get active till 2017-ish, and he'd have 1 or 2 each season. So I could see a guy like Jeanty, that'll get cut. I do think it'll get cut down at the next level. It's not something you don't share a concern with and emphasize, but compared to what he brings to the table, man. And with Melvin Gordon, dude, it wasn't just the volume of fumbles with Gordon. It was always the situation too. Like,
True.
The times he would fumble would be at like the penultimate worst possible time. You're driving, it's 3rd down, he picked up the yardage and then fumbles, and you're going, oh, dude, or whatever, end of game sequences. That's how I always remember Melvin Gordon III.
2022 season opener at Seattle. Didn't he fumble on the goal line? Good old Melvin. Yeah, it's true. And, we put up with that because he was the Broncos' best running back at the time, and he couldn't hold a candle talent-wise to an Ashton Jeanty. I mean, it's my opinion, Chad. Others can disagree, but I'm willing to overlook the fumbling issues because, like you said, all the other traits that he does bring to the table.
Yeah, James Tournier on Facebook said, I said day 1 Bo Nix was going to be a stud. Hope we draft his bro, Tez Johnson. By the way, there's some footage of what Scott and I saw of Tez at the Senior Bowl that you can go watch right now on the Mile High Huddle YouTube channel. I went into that with Tez Johnson, for what it's worth. I went into the Senior Bowl with Tez Johnson not even being on my radar relative to all that serious consideration as a draft pick. And other than the fact, Zach, that he is obviously Bo's adopted brother, the noteworthiness of him, that's where it ended for me. But he was very, very impressive. Like, always open. If the ball hit him in the hands, he caught it. So go watch his practice clips, because that's why you go to the Senior Bowl. I mean, the Senior Bowl itself, hey, it's fun and all, but the reason you go is to see these guys going one-on-one against their fellow best seniors from across the country.
Tez kind of reminds me of Jerry Jeudy without all the baggage and character concerns. And what I mean is his footwork, his ability to get open, Chad, at the top of the route, his start-stop ability, his, like you said, his ability to get open and create plays with the ball in his hands. He's not my number 1 priority. He's not my number 2. Might not be in my number 3, but if he's on the board in the middle rounds, that'd be a nice little cherry on top the Broncos offensive Sunday for Bo Nix.
Honestly, he reminds me of just a little bit smaller Emmanuel Sanders. Sanders wasn't a big guy. What was he, 5'10"? I'm talking from like the way he runs his routes, his kind of wiggle, his speed. Uh, Sanders pardon, let me pull it up. Sanders, I'm just reminding myself, he was 5'11", 180. Okay. Tez, much smaller than that, whatever, 5'7", 5. Hold on. Senior Bowl measurements. I got to remind myself. Okay, 5'9" and a quarter, but he's only 156 pounds. And you could see it on him when you're watching him out there with the other guys. Like he is smaller, but his play style, the way he runs his routes, the way just his vibe to me is very Emmanuel Sanders. He's just a little bit smaller.
You can't have enough pure pass catchers on this team. And I know that Sean Payton said he's not prioritizing wide receiver or they're comfortable there. But if you're sitting there in the 4th round or the 6th round and Tez is still there, you got to kind of think about pulling that trigger just for the sake of helping out your quarterback.
Indeed. Okay, a few other things, Zach, I want to get your take on. By the way, a really interesting read today, Eric Trickle. When you guys get time, go give it a read. His article, Bo Nix's rookie season versus a scouting report. Very interesting. But Zach, we had Dylan Von Arks with an article, Broncos offensive building blocks were ranked by Bleacher Report. So Bleacher Report, again, guys, 'tis the season, right? Lists, rankings, all that. And Bleacher Report's Mo Moten ranked the each team's like core building blocks and put the Broncos at number 16, smack dab in the middle of the league. To quote Dylan, here's what he said real fast, then I want your thoughts. Quote, and he asserted, by the way, Cortland Sutton, Quinn Miners, and Garrett Bowles as Denver's building blocks, okay? Obviously beyond Bo Nix. But, quote, Nix's passing numbers are impressive because he played with a mediocre 16th ranked rushing attack and only had one reliable receiver in Cortland Sutton, who recorded a career high 81 catches. On the flip side, Nix took snaps behind one of the league's best offensive lines. The Broncos have signed Bowles to 2 extensions, most recently last year. Miners earned his first All-Pro nod last season. Both are essential to Nix's pass protection. Yes, quarterbacks Jaden Daniels, Brock Purdy have the accolades and impressive passing numbers, but Nix has a stronger supporting cast, particularly a top-tier offensive line, close quote. And I think he missed also that Miners was re-signed last year as well. But your thoughts on the building blocks being ranked 16?
This is just for offense?
Yes, pardon me. You're right. Offensive building blocks.
I was going to say he's missing PS2 and maybe Nick Benito there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't say I disagree. You know, the Broncos are another high-end running back away, high-end tight end, or maybe another high-end receiver from moving up that list, Chad. But the takeaway I have is that Bo Nix made all that hay, and someone else acknowledged that he did that, as we've said all along, with a lack of a running game, just one solid weapon on the outside. He did have a good O-line, but he needed more, and then he didn't have last season. So I think it's a pretty accurate ranking for him.
By the way, also shifting gears in terms of storylines, I want to make sure you guys have all the info. And I know the MHI guys touched on this last night, but in case you missed it, the NFL is the Broncos got some really good news this week from the NFL. It's looking like the salary cap for teams is going to fall into the range of 277 to 281.5 million, which is a significant jump from the base cap last season of 255 million. And this is coming from ESPN's Dan Graziano. And so for the Broncos, I'm going to quote our guy, Bob Morris, who's kind of our resident cap guru at MHH. And he said, quote, that means OTC over the cap is projecting slightly more cap space for each NFL team as a result. In the Broncos case, they're now projected to have 41.78 million in cap space per over the cap, which is, slightly above the, let's call it 35 million they were originally projected to have. So, you can, especially with the experience the Broncos had last year, Zach, with getting creative and skinny on the salary cap and finding value free agents, you can make some hay with an extra 7 million in breathing room. And when you have the richest owners in the NFL, you can even leverage that further in the way you structure these deals in terms of signing bonuses, cash up front, all that. So it's good news for the Broncos.
It's all relative. 41 sounds like a lot for Denver, and it is, but the Patriots are leading the league, I think, with $110 million in available cap. It's kind of crazy. But if anything, Chad, every penny helps, if anything, to help pay off the rest of the Russell Wilson debt. You might want to look at locking down Nick Bonito this summer, maybe make a splash in free agency. So there's no such thing as having too much money to spend. And also keep in mind, this is 41.7 before any other moves are made, any other restructures, releases, trades, and etc.
True. Ronk, thank you, brother. Saying great show tonight. Chad and Zach on the Mile High Huddle podcast. Go Bo Broncos. Really appreciate your support, Mike, and just always being here, contributing to the conversation and supporting what we do here. But guys, don't dip out just yet. There's one last thing I want to touch on, but first, we're going to hit you with a few reminders here before we close out the show.
Another tremendous episode, as always, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on X at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on X at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every single podcast, check out mhhmerch.com. Get you some. If you haven't done so yet, drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please, 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 very important that you subscribe, you like, you share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans, just like you.
So I want to grab this because Nick won't be on the mic again until Monday, but he dropped his latest, version 3.0, 3-round Broncos mock draft. Last thing, and then we're getting out of here. And Zach, I just wanted your thoughts on the direction he took. And he freely admits, hey, look, we're all seeing the same thing over and over again, regardless of where you look on the internet, credible outlets. It's Jeanty, it's Warren, it's Colston. And he kind of lists the different guys he's gone through in the first preceding 2. So it's a good read. Check it out. But in his latest, he decides to buckle down on interior and fully solve Broncos O-line by drafting Gray Zabel, the interior offensive lineman from North Dakota State, Zach, at round 1, pick 20. And then I'm just going to cruise through these and then get your thoughts. And then in round 2, pick 51, he's taken Ole Miss defensive lineman Jared Ivey, which, by the way, it's a little bit high. He explains and he acknowledges that it's a little bit high for what you're typically seeing, where you're seeing Ivey go. But bottom line being defensive line, Ole Miss, round 2. Round 3, a newer tight end name being mocked to the Broncos by a noteworthy publication, Us. Gunnar Helm, Zach, tight end, Texas. So your thoughts on that trio being the first 3 picks of the Broncos, Zabel, Ivey, and Helm?
Well, from what I understand, he wanted to purposely kind of go against the grain because there was too many mocks mocking Loveland and all the different same players to Denver. So I understand with what he was going for. It's not how I would go, ignoring running back, not taking a tight end until round 3. I do like Helm. He can be a two-way player, blocker, and receiver. But if you have a Loveland on the board at 20 or a Jeanty or, God willing, a Warren, that's where I would go. And if you don't go that position in round 1, you got to, Chad, in round 2. You can't wait and ignore the blue chippers when securing a supporting cast around Bo Nix is the number 1 priority, bar none.
If a draft, and thank you, Todd, for the super chat, Broncos need interior O-line and D-line, who do they draft? There's so many good options, but this is why this particular draft, Todd, that we're talking about, mock, I should say, from Nick, I could get behind it if I knew that somewhere, it might be a little rich, but somewhere between their 4th round pick and one of their 3 6th round picks, or if they find a way to package something and come back in the 5th, they get my boy Jarquez, dude, Hunter from Auburn. He's not the speedster. He's not but he is twitched up. Like he moves really nice. I don't know, Scott, you got to help me understand why he's not being viewed higher in the draft. If it's just his speed or what, I don't know. But if this was the way the draft actually shook out, I'd be like going, okay, because a lot of those running backs, Zach, that you're talking about, by the time you get past the third round, they're gone. So Jarquez to me would be one of the guys that rises to the top in that area.
Yeah, for interior OL, this Abel pick I do like as like a plan D or plan E. For defensive line, Walter Nolan, if they want to go that route, I still think he's going to be a terror. I think he's going to perform like a Jalen Carter, who just tore up the Super Bowl and on that Eagles defense. Again, not the way I would go though, Chad. If a Loveland staring me in the face, a Jeanty, Henderson, Warren, I got to. I just have to. I owe it to my quarterback to make one of those picks.
And by the way, Todd, the other guy that I love interior D-line is Darius Alexander. That dude is a beast. But tonight, guys, a mile-high salute and a special shout-out to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters helping us keep these lights on, like the Papa Bear, David McElrath, Sam Bam, The Ronk, Eric Flynn, the Duchess checking in. Love you, Michaela. Taylor Christensen checking in. Eric, I already said. Mike, I already said. And Todd Ostendorf. Thank you, brother. Great to see everybody. Thank you so much for the support. And we will be back Sunday night, Zach and I. And then we'll have to figure out a plan for Monday night because I will be traveling. I don't recall exactly when you're hopping in the old airplane, but we might, I don't know. We might just skip Monday night. I'm not sure yet. It just depends on some of the other guys. But one more podcast from us before we take our trip to the Combine. And maybe we'll do on Sunday night, Zach, a little bit of preview of what we hope to see. Because our favorite part, look, we'll be talking to the prospects and all that stuff throughout the week. But we're leaving Monday night so we can be there Tuesday to hopefully ask some questions of George Payton and Sean Payton. So it'll be fun.
Cannot wait. We'll go over more of that Sunday with you guys. Until then, have a great start to your weekend. We'll see you then. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.